Hello YouTube and welcome to the nation of free to play. I'm Mr. Mondstadt and today I want to talk about the changing meta in Genshin Impact. What are the pros, what are the cons, what does it mean for newer players and how does it affect F2Ps? Make sure to stick around to the end to find out. Genshin's meta is changing all the time and with every new patch and character there are new team comps available that might be better or worse for certain endgame modes. However, the meta, meaning the most effective tactics available, is changing in more than just one way at the moment. What exactly do I mean by that? While the release of new units is nothing special and even a certain level of power creep is part of any gacha game, what I want to talk about is the shift from universally good characters to more and more niche units. For the longest time, Abyss floors were dominated by the same units all the time. You ran a DPS of choice and gave them Farina, Kazuha, Bennett and you were good to go. Maybe you played a core of Xiangling and Bennett, maybe the characters were slightly different, but there were a lot of universal supports. So let's take Kazuha for example. It doesn't really matter whether you play Freeze or Vape, Electrocharge or Mono Hydro, you can swirl an element and he was basically the best choice for any of these team cores. Same with Farina. No matter who's your main damage dealer, she will buff them all. So the most meta-defining units were top tier because they were more or less best in slot in so many teams. However, over the last year or so, this trend started to change. With the release of Emily, Hoyo told us players that niche is the way to go. She's a powerful sub DPS, but she is pretty much bound to the burning reaction. And yes, that is nothing entirely new. We had Chevreuse before, we had Nilou, but one cannot deny the current development. Units like Sidlali, Auron or Escoffier are all strong, but are all bound to a certain reaction or element. And it's not only happening to supports. Mualani wants to vape, anything else is a waste. Kinich wants burning, or you will lose a lot of his damage. And if the rumors about Skirks could turn out to be true, well, you'll see what I mean. So Xylonen might be one of the last characters with a universal approach. She shreds resistances and works with everything except Dendro and Anemo. And when she released back in version 5.1, she was considered one of maybe the most broken support in the game. How things have changed already. When this video comes out, Escoffier is only a few days away and theory crafters already made their Excel sheets and came to the conclusion that she will probably replace her entirely in freeze teams. And a Yansan with some constellations might be as good if not better for Mavuika. Plus there is Sidlali of course. In other words, her role has changed from a must pull to a never best in slot but always good option. But never best in slot? How could this have happened so fast? Hoyo realized that they cannot release one universal unit after the other without letting the power creep get out of control. So what they will do instead, they will release niche units that focus on one reaction and really buff these team cores, but nothing else. Sidlali shreds Hydro and Pyro resistance and is almost a must for mel teams. Yansan needs characters that move a lot to get her full buffs, so she's not generally power creeping Bennett. Escoffier will bring Freeze back to the meta due to her reshred abilities that depends on the number of Hydro and Cryo units in your party. So this is what's happening in Genshin right now, and to be honest, after almost 100 playable characters, it is not too surprising to me. But what are the pros and cons of the strategy for the players? Who might benefit, who will have a disadvantage? And what should you do as an F2P who wants to keep up to the meta? Let's talk about the pros first. If you are a high AR player and you've been playing the game for a while, I think this focus towards more niche units is a possibility to make the game more interesting and more unique. The game can become quite boring if you basically play the same two teams for every Spiral Abyss reset. In the meantime, you have some older units on your bench that you probably like, otherwise you wouldn't have pulled them, but they are not strong enough any longer to 36-star Abyss. Let's take Ayaka as an example. If you have a very invested build and good supports, you might still be able to clear the endgame with her. But for me, who only has a mid build on her and doesn't care enough to spend thousands of resin on Blizzard Stray in 2025, I can't. So she is benched for now, but what if there was a buff? A buff in the form of a limited 5-star from Fontaine named Escoffier. If the calculations are correct, Ayaka will apparently be on the same damage level as Arlecchino with Escoffier on her team. That would be something, so newer niche buffs have the potential to make older units viable again, and with that, not everyone ends up playing Mavuika for any hard endgame content. Universal supports, on the other hand, can also buff older units, sure, but if their buffs are universal, they will also buff the already broken damage dealers, which is not really something we need. Xylonen improves Ayaka, but she also improves Neviette, Arlecchino and Mavuika. Yeah, great. So I don't know about you, but I think this is a pro and can make the game more versatile again. Another positive is that you will avoid or at least dial down power creep this way. Power creep is definitely an issue in Genshin and I already made a video on that, so check it out if you're interested. With the release of Mavuika, the standard for new damage dealers has increased a lot, and with Skirk around the corner, I expect her to be top tier yet again. Still, Hoyo should ensure that the power creep does not spin out of control and every new DPS is simply much stronger than the last one. This will throw off the player base and especially free-to-plays will end up frustrated after a while. So one option would be to slightly increase the damage output of newer units over time, but give them certain limitations in order to reach that damage ceiling. Mavuika wants fighting spirits for her burst, so you need other Nutline characters in her team. And allegedly, Skirk will also have some requirements built into her kit that will decrease her damage significantly if not met. This trend is nothing too new, as the same is true for Mualani, who wants to vaporize, her Shark Bites, or Kniech, who wants to trigger burning. The same is true for supports, of course. More Reshret per patch would be stupid, but if you limit something to one reaction or one element, it can help in balancing the game instead of making it worse. And one last advantage over universal units is the fact that you can focus on the characters and playstyles you really enjoy. Let me make this clear. Yes, Escoffier's kit looks pretty broken, but if you don't like playing a freeze or don't even have a Hydra or Cryo DPS, you don't have to get her. If Escoffier would buff everything though, there would be no way you can skip her if you care about the game's meta. So in other words, by making DPSs and supports more niche, there's less pressure to get them all. I expect every new DPS to be at least pretty good, so it entirely depends whether you like the character, the design, playstyle, reaction and so on. And the units you do get should last you a long time, because they are so niche. As an example, I doubt Hoyo will release another freeze buff that is stronger than Escoffier anytime soon. However, with all that said, not everything is great the way it is, and there are also some cons to this development. Let's talk about them. While you do not have to get every new 5-star, the main issue with the niche units is that Hoyo releases 2 5-stars that are meant to work together for the best performance. Emily and Kniech, Mavuika and Silali, Escoffier and Skirk. So instead of getting 1 unit, you now have to get 2, and especially when they are on the same banner, this is very difficult to achieve, especially if you don't swipe. Admittedly, you can still play them individually with other 5 or 4-star options. Will it work? Yes. Will it be significantly worse? 100%. Since the characters become more niche, this also means that there are less F2P alternatives to them, and you simply cannot run one of the older universal supports on your account without having to sacrifice some damage. Making a new unit dependent on another new niche 5-star is almost the same as making the new unit reliant on their C1 or C2. Instead of a constellation, you just need to get their best in slot partner. Or you could of course fix this issue by making the best slot partner a 4-star who is on banner with a 5-star, but who are we kidding? They are not gonna do that and lose out on a bunch of money. To be fair, I don't blame them. It is a gacha game, not charity, but it would be nice from time to time. But hey, at least the latest 4-stars like Auron, Lanyan or Janssen were pretty good. Anyway, these two issues, the reliance on another 5-star and the lack of 4-star alternatives, are definitely the biggest downsides of the current development, both for newer players and for F2Ps. So, what is the best way to deal with it? What should you do as an F2P or a newer player? In my opinion, it is best to not focus on the meta too much or too soon. Especially if you're just starting your journey through Teyvat, endgame content should not be one of your worries. It is endgame content for a reason, and it took me over a year until I 36 starred Abyss for the first time. There's so much other content in the game that does not require you to have the latest 5-star or super invested builds. Instead, pull the units you like and enjoy playing. Watch some guides on the kit on YouTube and then make a decision on who it should be. I'd always suggest to focus on one damage dealer first and try to build a team for them. The team also does not need to consist of other 5-stars. This way, you will not burn out. If you're an experienced player, you know all of this already, but what is the best approach for F2Ps? Well, I have to be honest with you, there is no secret trick that will suddenly make Genshin more F2P friendly. However, I've played the game for quite a while by now and I still enjoy it, so I guess I didn't do everything wrong. I'd suggest basically the same strategy, pull for who you like, but I do also pay some attention to the meta. An example. I do like Chiori, but I don't have another Geo who summons a construct who is considered good, and so I won't get her in 5.6. I do like Nilou, but Bloom is no longer as good as it used to be, so I always skipped her so far. I like Mualani, and she is also pretty strong, so I will get her when she comes around. I'm not a meta slave, I will still pull for Yoimiya next patch, even though I already have Mavuika, Arlecchino, Hu Tao and a C6 coming. I try to have a list in mind of 5-stars I want to own on my account, no matter what. And then I save until I have enough for them. I never really pull for anyone who didn't make it onto the list, unless I have more pulls available than I need. Also, don't put more than, let's say, 4 units on the list, otherwise it won't work, obviously. And if I pull for anyone who's not on the list, then it's a support for one of the units on the list. So Skirk is on my list, which means Escoffier is worth going for. The other units are Mualani and Yoimiya, and I have a total of over 500 pulls, so even with bad luck, it should check out. It requires discipline, I know, but I never feel burned out from grinding or losing a 50-50. That is my approach, and I will keep this also for the changing meta of Genshin Impact. And with that, we've reached the end of this week's video. What are your thoughts on the current development in Genshin's meta? Do you like the shift from universal to niche, or do you think it will cause issues? Let me know in the comments down below. Also, I hope this video helped you in finding your F2P strategy. If so, please leave a like or even subscribe to the channel, it really helps a lot. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!